And we're going to listen to our third speaker, Ayda Karimli, representative of the Southern Azerbaijan Alliance. Following the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, Northern Azerbaijan became the independent Republic of Azerbaijan, while Southern Azerbaijan remained part of the Iranian state. Ayda's lecture will address the friction between the demands for a right to self-determination within a state and the confrontation of disasters whose conditions can only be addressed on a global scale.
We are a political organization who works together with various parties and organizations for human rights and self-determination for the Azerbaijani people in Iran. Currently, our main cooperation is with the South Azerbaijan Democrat Party and the South Azerbaijan Student Movement. Our goal is a democratic, secular, and equal society where all nationalities in Iran have autonomy and have their ethnic and national needs met. The population of Iran is estimated to be 77 million. Of these 77 million, approximately 70% are of non-Persian origin. Iran consists of a wide range of different ethnic groups and nationalities, such as the Arabs, the Baluchi, the Kurds, the Turkmens, the Lurs, and of course, the Azerbaijani Turks. The Azerbaijani Turks are estimated to be 35 million in Iran. Next week, the new school year in Iran will start, and 4 million children will be starting their education. For 70% of these, the day will be starting with anxiety. The language that they have been spoken since birth will now be forbidden, and they will have to understand at the age of 5 that the only right identity is the Persian identity. Let me stress here that the right to education in your mother tongue is granted in the Iranian constitutional law, but it is not permitted due to the concern for national security. Looking to the history, South Azerbaijan have had many revolutions against the Iranian regime. In December 1945, we gained independence in South Azerbaijan, and we fought for federalism and democracy within the whole of Iran. Unfortunately, we lost our independence just 1 year after, in 1946, and more than 30,000 Azerbaijani were killed by the Persian forces, and millions were forced to leave southern Azerbaijan within 1 week. Iran's chauvinistic policy works with clear guidelines concerning the different ethnicities in the country. They use out a systematic approach to achieve their goals, which is assimilate, twist the history, destroy the economy, and erase the ethnic boundaries by systematically mixing the various peoples and by creating conflicts between the different groups. The racist policy is shown in the strategic placement of factories and industrial development, mainly in the Persian regions of the country. Millions of people are forced to move in order to maintain their economical survival. The total destruction of environment of the different ethnicities ensures that the different regions are bound to the Persian regions and the Persian regime. Clear examples are the Karun River, Hamun Lake, and Urmia Lake. The ecological problems have undoubtedly a political purpose. In all the above examples, the regime have chosen to ignore specific areas of the country and irrigate others. They have, for example, led rivers from the Ahvaz part in the south to the Persian-dominant areas in central of Iran. Here it is important to point out that the central parts of the country traditionally are dry and even in some cases a desert. So why choose to divert water to these traditional dry areas, creating more desert and expand poverty in Iran? The answer is sadly simple and hangs on the desire to weaken the political force and nations seeking self-determination and democracy. As we look at the situation with Urmia Lake, the picture becomes even clearer. Urmia Lake is the world's second largest saltwater lake and the largest of Middle East. Even after the international community stressed the need to save the lake from drying out, and even after Iran's own experts in the area explained that only 5% of the water in the lake is left, and that in a matter of weeks it will be totally dried out, the regime in Iran do nothing. They choose instead to once again transport water from the Caspian Sea to the central parts of the country. The lake will completely dry out within a couple of weeks, and this time next year, the 8 billion tons of salt will be completely dry. And then, together with the autumn winds, comes the real disaster. The salt will travel within a radius of 500 square kilometers, which will not only affect Iran, but also its neighboring countries. The Middle East region is, as we all know, a very insecure and unstable region. Can we afford to fuel the 21st century's greatest ecological disaster on top of the already extreme, sensitive political situation? The drying out of Lake Urmia is one of the largest environmental disasters of the 21st century. The constructions of 47 dams on the rivers leading water to the lake, combined with the Iranian regime's chauvinistic policy, has sentenced the lake and the region to a death penalty. Today, just a few of the dams surrounding the lake contains more water than the whole of the lake combined. Tearing down just a few would therefore save the lake from completely drying out. But instead, the regime directs the water from the dams to the central parts of Iran. So what does the ruling government of Iran win on destroying its own regions and environment? Why is it more important to create rivers and waterfalls in the central of the country than to save the agricultural society of Iran and to prevent an environmental and ecological disaster? Once again, the answer is heartbreaking. The aim is simply to scatter the geographic concentration of the Turkish people by harming the environment where they live, destroy the economy and infrastructure to weaken the people of Southern Azerbaijan and to turn them against each other and under Persian rule. The salt in Urmia Lake also has an extremely high concentration of uranium. The water that remains in the lake is characterized as heavy water. They have been building a large military station just by the lake where the salt and the water daily have been transported to and examined with. This is too much of a coincidence to not be seen as a direct reason for the government's wish to dry out the lake. Are the outside world and the international community aware of the situation in Iran? Both yes and no. Unfortunately, ignorance is great because the information coming out of Iran is often partial and misleading. The international community is also afraid of a long and bloody civil war in Iran that may directly affect the whole region's peace and security. The different nationalities of Iran all have same ethnic people in neighboring countries. For examples, the Turks of Iran are the same nationality as the Republic of Azerbaijan in the north, as well as the people of Turkey in the west. Obviously, a civil war in Iran for this reason can very quickly turn into a regional war between the various nations in the region. The Persian regime is playing on this fear, thereby preventing a peaceful and non-violent solution from being achieved. The regime of Iran lies on a dictatorial and chauvinistic structure. A sustainable and just political solution, respecting the self-determination of the people of Iran, can be found in a democratic, secular, and federal political rule. This means dividing the power equally between the different groups of Iran. However, here within lies two specific difficulties. Firstly, a democratic norm still has not been grounded in the society. Secondly, the Persian ruling groups, as well as the Persian opposition, are not committed to the idea of shared power, as history proves. The international community plays a major key role. It is through the international recognition of the different nationalities' rights in Iran and the clear policy that takes care of the need of the different ethnic groups in the country that a peaceful solution can be found. However, it is important that any assistance from the outside world is on the parties' own terms. The international embargoes on Iran is incredibly important. Yes, it's true that they mostly have affected the population of Iran and increased poverty and misery. But they have also forced Iran to sit at the negotiation table and compromise. This work has to continue. These talks also have to consider human rights, democracy, ecology, and of course, the national rights. It is also high time to reject the outdated view of what should be seen as national versus international affairs. Human rights and the right for self-determination cannot be seen as a national concern. Who is the nation, and who is to decide its concerns? It is the international community's responsibility that these overriding principles are followed and granted by all states. There can be no talk of any international military intervention in Iran. It would worsen the situation and set groups against each other rather than to liberate the population. The geopolitical situation, including the conflict in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, has also normalized the use of violence, both by the state and between the population. When you look at this from a perspective that also takes into account Iran's enormous military strength, its connection with terrorist organizations, and the likelihood that the country possesses a nuclear weapon, the consequences can be devastating, especially for Iran's non-Persian population. The only option is international support at the grassroots movements. Similar to the one in May 2006, when millions of Azerbaijani Turks demanded their rights and took to the streets, after being referred to as cockroaches in the official magazine of Iran. Let me here remind you that this was also the exact approach of the Nazi Germany before the Holocaust and the propaganda in Rwanda before the genocide in '94. The uprising was not recognized by any international media, and even though hundreds of young Azerbaijani Turks were killed in the uprising, it was silenced. Today, the political platform in South Azerbaijan has moved into the football arenas. The South Azerbaijan football team has become the symbol for our quest for freedom and democracy. The game on the football field and the audience's cheering chants have been replaced with political slogans and a fight for survival. When it is no longer possible to get our voices heard elsewhere, we scream out our anxiety over Urmia Lake, our anger over the chauvinistic policy in Iran, and our sincere desire to create a better society for all between soccer goals. And the team Traktor symbolizes the entire nation's struggle. In our fight for equal rights, many of our activists have been imprisoned, such as Latif Hasanle, Ayat Mehrale Bayoglu, Mahmoud Fazle, Shahram Radmer, Behbud Golizade, Said Matinpur, and counting. It is time to look past each other's differences. It is time to join together and take a stand for everyone's right to be different within similar conditions and laws. We demand change, and we demand to be heard. Oppression, dictators, racism, and injustice must be replaced with freedom, democracy, self-determination, and equality. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your time.
Ecological mismanagement is clearly a pressing issue and an existential one in the Southern Azerbaijan case. You articulated this, and you also articulated this is not unique in Iran or the world. For example, the destruction of forests for the Mapuche in Chile is another example of how ecological mismanagement can be terrible for indigenous communities or minority groups or unrepresented people. So without appropriate representation, as you made very clear in your speech, at a national level, as is the case with South Azerbaijan, or at an international level, as you can see with global warming, for example. People who are unrepresented, minorities and indigenous people are disproportionately affected and are particularly vulnerable for these negative consequences of ecological mismanagement. So then, is self-determination the only answer? You made clear in your speech that you think that international cooperation is a good thing and that there should be more support for grassroots movement in Southern Azerbaijan. However, would you agree with more international cooperation? Could you elaborate on this with other nations and peoples and groups around the world who face similar situations? You elaborated that in Iran this would be the case, but would it make sense to do this in a worldwide atmosphere? For example, this very forum that we have now is a good example of this, where you can spread ideas and address this problem that people face together. Could you elaborate more on international cooperation with regards to this specific case?
There are two parts of this. First of all, we have Lake Urmia, and what kind of cooperation and what kind of a help do we need to solve that issue. And then we have the issue of self-determination for the nations and the ethnicities in Iran. If we look at the situation with Lake Urmia, it's very important to know that this is not a national concern for just Azerbaijani Turks. If you look at the map on the opposite side, you see the map over Kurdistan, and you see that the regions that is also West Azerbaijan is also in that map Kurdistan. So this means that this is a very sensitive issue also for the Kurds. And as I said, if the salt travels within 500 radars, well, which countries will be affected? Well, that's Iran, that's Turkey, that's Iraq, that's Azerbaijan, that's Georgia, that's Armenia. So obviously the first cooperation should be between these countries. And now that we don't have it, I believe that it's the international community's responsibility to not only press upon Iran, but also the neighboring countries to react and to press Iran also, because we know that when this question comes up in the media and in international organizations, then they try to do something about it. They start to talk about it. They start to negotiate over, can we take water from the Caspian Sea also to Lake Urmia, and so on and so on. So bringing light on the issue actually can do a lot. And as I said, we only have weeks before it's completely dried out, and then only a year before the salt storms will occur. So I believe that this should be one of the top issues on the UN meetings, on the European Parliament's meetings. This should be one of the top issues, especially now that we have ISIS and other issues in the region, because we are talking about 15 million people being directly affected by the salt storms. 15 million people. Where are these people going to go? You cannot live under salt storms. And with the salt being radioactive, you will not be able to use the earth afterwards. You will not be able to grow anything on the earth. So what will happen with this region when these salt storms will occur? It's not a question of if, it's a question of when it will occur. So that's the one part of it. The other one is the issue of self-determination for the different nations, and in this South Azerbaijan, in Iran. I believe that it would be very hard for the international community to create a solution for that issue directly. That's why I said that they should just support the grassroots movements. This is something that we need to do within Iran with the different nationalities, with the different ethnicities. And the first step is obviously a democratical structure. I do not believe that Rouhani will be so democratic that he will just arrange for free elections. So we need to press them into doing so, and in that I believe that the international embargoes is a key role, and that is something that we need to press even more in order to make Rouhani act and to bring a platform where the other ethnicities and the other groups can try to solve the issue of self-determination in Iran.